Great. So I think, yeah, we could start. We could start with a round of introductions, and also your experience with the review system, just a few words, and then we can dive more in depth later with the questions from the audience. And I also have some questions prepared. Yeah. So, yeah, thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Very happy to be here. My name is Dennis. I am currently a researcher at Cohere. So been working in the industry for the last 2 years or so. But I'm still trying my best to kind of stay active in the community, particularly NLP. So most recently, I've been also area chair here at ACL Rolling Review. But I think it's also interesting to kind of evaluate how we are doing things relative to other ML venues, etc. Yeah, I think it's enough for now.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Lukas. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Southern Denmark, and my experience with reviews is that I've been reviewing since a couple of years for ACL star venues, and also for the journals and other things, and experiencing both sides of the peer review system.
Hi, I am Verna Dankers. I finished my PhD in Edinburgh recently, and I'm joining Mila and McGill University as a postdoc. It feels, I don't know, it feels like it was yesterday, and then I was working on my very first review for I think it was Connell, the first conference I reviewed for. I think I've been reviewing for ACL conferences for like 5-ish years, and I've been an AC for like 1.5 years, something like that. And I also review for journals. Not so much for other ML conferences, so it would be good to hear something about that. So yeah, I've experienced multiple sides of the peer review process, and of course as an author.
Great. Yeah. I'm May from Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. I was working as assistant professor there, and I drive research in human-centric, trustworthy LLM reasoning and agents. I've been involved in the reviewing process of our NLP community for a couple of years now, including working as an area chair for various conferences. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. I can also introduce myself. My name is Juana Ignat. I just started as a professor last year at Santa Clara University, and before that I was a PhD and a postdoc at University of Michigan, and originally I'm from Romania. And I work on multimodal, and yeah, have been dealing with the review system for a while as a reviewer, as an AC. So it's interesting to see the evolution of it. Yeah, so our session is about primarily focusing on reviews and rebuttals. So we will focus on the questions from the audience in person. Actually, on Zoom, we recently had a problem with bots entering the Zoom link. So if we make it public, I'm a bit worried about that. Especially I'm alone here, so it's hard to moderate both Zoom and in person. So I trust we'll get a lot of good questions from the in-person audience. Yeah. And then we can have the recording for everyone later. Yeah, so let's see. Do we have a first question? Yes, thank you. You can also shortly introduce yourself, like your name and where you're from, and yeah, what your research is on.
My master, where I yeah, so basically, actually, my thesis was actually on peer review evaluation, so I'm kind of interested in this area. My question is basically now with among this kind of trend that we have a lot of submissions, basically getting our time, so we can rely on general reviewers like me, myself. So where do you think what brings about is like basically we kind of rely a lot now on junior kind of reviewers, and kind of this kind of percentage increases. So I think where are we going with this? Thank you.
Okay, so who wants to start? It's more like a general question, right? Like relying more on generative AI. How?
Talked about this about junior kind of reviewers. I mean,
Junior reviewers.
Kind of like there's no like a structured way of kind of using. I mean, there's guidelines of kind of people should review first before reviewing. That means there's no like class or kind of like centralized way of kind of preparing junior reviewers, so to speak. So what's kind of your source about this?
If nobody else wants, I can give a brief start. So I think the important thing here is to factor in who is training reviewers, right? So kind of to repeat the question is like, what do we do about the increasing number of people submitting papers? If I think back to my first reviews, the way it worked was I was sub-reviewing for my supervisor, right? Like they got assigned reviews, they let me do the initial review, and then the important part was kind of talking together with them about like, how do I actually review better? What are the things I'm not looking out for? And kind of getting this mentorship. I think the problem is we cannot scale fast enough relative to the number of submissions we're getting. I think the first step is encouraging all members of the community to actually contribute reviews, because we do have people that are experienced enough, but don't regularly become reviewers, or for various reasons have not in the past. At the same time, this introduces some problems, right? You have now people that are doing the least amount of work they have to because they are forced to do reviews. And I think that's a very important thing we could also talk about later. In the meantime, I think it's just having access to those people is a good starting place. But then training up the next generation is something that we could also improve, right? Like having learning materials online is a good start. But I feel you kind of always need somebody to talk to in the form of some experienced academic that can tell you why you specifically didn't do a perfect review of this initial paper. And I don't think anyone besides your direct supervisor has the capacities. I would highly encourage people to talk to colleagues, could be PhD students, and try to basically just cross-check each other's review, because that is the least amount of work you can do on top of doing your own review while still getting some form of feedback.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just to add on that, so that's one spicy question right in the beginning. I know there are some people that are a bit skeptical of junior reviewers, but I'm not. So I think it's a good idea, and ideally, of course, guided maybe by some senior researcher. But I can't remember exactly, but I've seen also some kind of studies on that junior researchers are not necessarily worse at producing reviews than senior researchers. And maybe that is because, I don't know, they spend more effort and actually dedicate a couple of hours to the paper instead of a senior researcher just, okay, I have to do this in half an hour. Let's see how far I get. Yeah? So that's also a trade-off worth considering. But if you have access to someone to get advice on how to do it beyond just the guidelines, so that is perfect, and then maybe even cross-check your review after you're done.
Yeah, so to add to that, so some of the things you mentioned were sort of like community-wide issues, like how can we make sure that everyone contributes? I think something else that at least I would have been super interested in as a PhD student is if at the level of the university, or like in my case, the School of Informatics, there would be some sort of like centralized like mini course for PhD students or something like that. Like I did have like a PhD level course about basically how to be an NLP researcher, but actually I don't think peer review was a part of that. So I think like instead of course, everyone has their own advisor, but that could also be something that's slightly more taught in a like slightly more centralized way. So I think there are definitely opportunities there for being like, okay, we all know that even like during your master's, at the beginning of your PhD, we all need to learn how to review. So let's make sure there are some like more centralized resources, either at the community level, such as this, but also maybe within a university, or even within an NLP group within a university, like all new PhD students or all research-oriented master students work on that together. Like I would have really liked that during my PhD. So assistant professors, maybe this is something for you.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm actually just starting as a assistant professor. I noticed that in my university too, and I try to talk about that, how community building for PhD students, especially, or graduate students, is really important to learn from each other and also not feel like the PhD is so lonely. So yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
And I think time and effort goes a long way. So even for junior reviewers, when they take time to read a paper, obviously they have a good starting point of research skills because they completed a 8-page project and submitted a paper, right? And then so I think time spent in reading the papers carefully and following the reviewer guideline is a very good starting point. And these days, our community is also going more like have a lot of resource available for people to develop their reviewing skills, like the reviewing guidelines from related conference, as well as open reviews. The website portal have a lot of like reviews available for you to look at for submitted papers. For example, NERP's iClear conferences, you can see the accepted papers and how reviewers touch them, so you can like follow their style or like way of thinking. And then for ACL UMNOP as well, for a good a section of authors who agree to release their reviews, we can also like learn from that. And also the good thing about our ACL rolling review system is that it allows for a process of interaction with authors. So once maybe like a paper is released, maybe depending on the author response, sometimes they will have be confident and stand their stance on their beliefs, and maybe area chairs will step in to moderate some guidelines. For example, if there's any breach of guideline rules. Yeah, so I think reviewers can the qualities can keep on improving from spending time and looking at different guidelines and examples across the web, and also through the process of interacting with authors and area chairs.
Thank you so much. Yeah, those are really great points, and how we can learn from each other as also human learning. Because I wanted to mention, I just found a paper, previous poster session, about how to do this in an automatic way using an LLM. And I just posted the poster. I'm not sure if the author is here. I discussed with her before if she wants to present a bit of her work. But yeah, so it's called Lazy Review, and they constructed a data set of reviews collected from EMNLP and other conferences, ACL, and they annotated this. So it's very interesting. It's for the purpose to create is to create an LLM that gives feedback automatically on the reviews you write. So that's related to how to do better reviewing, right? So you could get this ideally from your colleagues, but if you're really alone in this journey, you can also use LLMs, or maybe a combination. I think that would be the best. So I think we're moving towards more automatic process to be integrated, right? Because we're working with NLP tools, and we're kind of, I don't know, like the review system is kind of broken right now. So we should use what we're building to also help ourselves and thrive as a community. So hopefully we'll see more such works. And yes. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah. Yeah, so your question is, what do you think about paying people, hiring professional reviewers, right, to improve the quality? As you said, like we're all busy, right? Especially more senior people have to finish the review much shorter time. So yeah, that could be a solution. But well, yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
I feel like I don't know enough about the ASO organization to answer the question, but I feel like my main concern is financial. Like, who is going to pay that? That's I mean, it's a wonderful idea, and maybe like even certain people within our community would be willing to spend more time reviewing in exchange for payment. But I have no idea how to even begin to organize that.
I think this is very interesting. I think there's also the factor of like hiring experienced reviewers. So like how much in the hiring process. So these days we also have this incentive for like best outstanding reviewers. I see in recent posts that there are people who get like free registration, which in a sense is some monetary reimbursement. So I think it's an interesting idea, but like, for example, like how much portion of the reviewer pool should we like reward to, and how much the monetary amount? These are all like practical things to worth thinking more from the higher level organization committee. Yeah.
Not much to add, but my gut feeling is also that it wouldn't be scalable, and the people would be ourselves still, probably, because I'm not sure if we can find external people with enough expertise that are yeah, not in this community, let's say. But then it boils down to giving out incentives, as mentioned. Yeah, so could be nice, but who pays? And that's the question. Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully the ACL staff hears this. We're gonna tag them on Twitter.
I'm going to give this spicy take, and I don't think it's a good idea because it creates a whole lot of problems. You know, what is an appropriate amount of compensation for one group of people could be a very different amount for another group of people. And it's a very controversial topic on disincentivizing not doing your reviews. I was shocked the first time I've been an AC to see how many people just don't complete their assigned load. And I think this is a far bigger problem. Rather than finding more capacity, is enforcing the current load or even a fraction of that from everyone who signed up to review. And I think we can probably get away. So how do I say this? I know there is a very big discrepancy in how much people can spend time-wise on reviewing, but I think if you're submitting a paper, you have some obligation as a community member to give back. Because at the same, while I would appreciate being paid as a reviewer, I also benefit from submitting myself, other people doing the review work for me for free, essentially, right? So I think it's a kind of zero-sum game. And yeah, I like the soft incentives that you mentioned where you kind of give back through conference registration fees. I think currently they're only for virtual attendance. So that's obviously kind of a lesser incentive for some people attending anyways in person. But I think kind of having something like this is probably more worthwhile than actively hiring or paying people for their review time, as sad as it is, but I agree with the financial difficulties of that.
Yes. Yeah, go ahead.
Curious whether you think there should be some non-monetary incentives to attract more people to your reviews, like, for example, some sort of gamification of reviewing, like gain points per review, for example. Would you think of the idea?
So gamification system for reviewing, and then what could you do with the points? So more of like for free registration or
Or
competition could create another game. Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay, very interesting question. Other forms of like points or rewards. So I think there are also like from a professional standpoint, these days there are people who do their reviews well and they get a best reviewer nomination. I haven't gotten one yet, and so I always get incentivized to write better reviews. So one day I get to reach that target. And then, but at a broader, taking a step back, I believe there's positive reinforcement learning and negative reinforcement learning. So on the negative side, it's like there are some reviewers these days when they find reviewers who are irresponsible, trickling in reviews late or writing super short reviews. These days, there are a more push and drive along other conferences in the community for area chairs to go down and like send them reminder emails or like this is a super short review, which is irresponsible reviewing. And then there are like some negative like penalties attached to it. For example, like risk of someone's reviewer's own paper not being accepted. This has not been adopted into our ACL community yet. But I think it's something that different people are considering. So there are a balance to it. On one hand, we want to communicate different reviewing needs at a professional wording tone, so everybody buys it and buys it from a professional level, and then give a good mix of positive and negative rewards. I think is a way to think more about it from our community.
Those are excellent points. I think also the pure like gamification based on points, for instance, is like too much about quantity and maybe not enough of an incentive for quality. I think we should like right now we are sort of barely getting enough reviews for the conference, but then the quality is like really, really lacking. So I think that's definitely like the main thing to target at the moment. I know that ARR at the moment has like some sort of scoreboard online of like the percentage of excellent reviews that you've written is visible with your name attached to that. So maybe that's one way in which quality is like people are trying to incentivize quality. But yeah, I'm not in favor of the gamification because of the emphasis on quantity, I would say. Yeah. Any further comments?
One of the things, not necessarily related to gamification, but what it kind of relates to that is we have a positive thing that is the centralization on open review, right? Like we mostly adopted that as the platform for reviewing, at least in the broader NLP and even ML space. And it kind of allows, I think, only now to have some of these initiatives, like what I call reviewer permanence, where so far, oftentimes you're reviewing a pool of reviewers within a particular conference at best, if just like maybe somebody's coming in for the first time, etc., you know nothing about them. And it's not necessarily about the gamification aspect of it for the reviewer, but I think the other side of, as an area chair, kind of, can I see who has historically done good reviews? It creates partially a false incentive that you might want to rely more on the people that actually take care, which then puts more work on the people that are already putting in effort. But I think having a system that even just any data is better than no data on how good are they doing reviews, how consistently are they doing reviews, and then using that also to penalize their submissions. Again, it's a very negative way of looking at things, but I believe we can do a lot of doing through disincentivizing, like that negative reward learning we talked about before.
Yeah, thank you. Are there, yes, another question?
I know there's some submissions like 8,000 for the February cycle, but will it be helpful to like give less reviews to junior researchers? Because we're starting out to like learn how to do the review process when you do it the first time, you need to change the guidelines, you draft, you spend a lot of time, and then you have the option of like take 4 papers or give us a big reason why you don't review, or take more papers. And it's like, if you like start with like 1 or 2 and like from cycle to cycle, like on open review, see like which cycle it is for you, and like the longer you review, the more reviews you can do, and like you know if they can produce some quality reviews. But then like as a junior researcher, you get like 4 reviews, read through everything, get an email. If you write responsible reviews, you will get banned from submitting to this conference. And it's like kind of intimidating. And would it be like helpful to like just to risk like a couple to junior researchers?
Yes, I think when I started, I could write 1 or 2 reviews. So I'm not sure. I think they changed the system now to start from 4. Probably. Oh, wow. Yeah, probably is because we really need reviews, reviewers. Yes, that's a good point, right? Again, the ACL staff should hear about this. Good points raised. Yes. Any thoughts on this?
So maybe just as a clarification, I think the idea is that you cover the amount of reviews you cause, right? Like you, as an author, need at least 3 reviews. I think it's to make up for that same amount of work you're causing. I generally agree though with your take. I think especially for junior people, you're right. I have not enough insight into the distribution process of like who gets assigned review, who determines how many reviews somebody has to make. Like as an AC, you're basically given a pool of people you can choose from, and that's about as much as I can see. But I generally, even as an area chair or something, like I would help in cycles where I know if I can do a bit less work, I'd be more willing to do it regularly. That might be my personal opinion. So bring it up with the ARR editors. I think they would love some feedback from the community. I'm not sure if we have a session here at ACL, but there's for sure like plenty of platforms where you can submit ideas like this. I think that's a very good take.
Great, thank you. Hi, Zijing. Thanks for joining. Yeah, do we have other questions about the review system? Yes.
What's the best advice for writing a good review?
Yes, I wanted to get there too on a more positive note, right? Like maybe you can think of maybe specific examples in your experience when you got your reviews. Did a review stand out to you like being very helpful? And if so, what were the characteristics? Like what made it helpful?
Yeah, so there are many different aspects, but so one general advice is to just to imagine that you would know the author personally, like it would be some colleague in your lab that gave you the paper and do a mock review essentially, and then try to be positive about it, try to give advice how the paper can be improved rather than trying to spot the negatives. I think that's a good advice I got from someone, and I would like to relay. Yeah, well, it's on a high level, of course, but maybe the other speakers have more details.
So just to double check, was your question how to write a good review, or what are good aspects of what are the aspects of a good review that make it good?
So if you say which aspects are good for review, then those would then be things you would do to write a good review.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so I'll give two answers. Like one is sometimes I wonder, like, how do I feel, like what allows me to write a good review? So for me, that means being very methodical about my process of reviewing. So I've come up with a system that works for me. I follow the system, and then I feel like at the end, I feel like, okay, this is a decent, fair, detailed, well thought out review. I could tell you more about my system later, but that's, I guess it can be very personal to individuals. As an AC, what makes a good review is something to, like when you write a review, you have to think about both the authors and then also the AC. So like it has to be sort of explicit enough such that, for instance, the AC knows what you're talking about, even if they haven't read the paper themselves. So if the AC has, for instance, 10 papers to meta review, then it can be hard to read all 10 in detail. So then you really want to be able to rely on reviewers. So like a review that's clearly written with like both audiences in mind, that's well organized, has like bullet points, but then also like clarifications and elaborations. A review with suggestions for the author, so not just like weaknesses being pointed out, but also potential ways to improve or revise that. Those are things that I really appreciate in a review as an AC.
Yeah, I really liked these suggestions earlier. And from something to add on top of that, I would think a hierarchy of different levels of reviewing comments would be helpful. Like some in the maybe very short term, something that can be fixed in a day, like maybe writing, formatting, and then something that can be fixed in a week's time span. Like, so, for example, like little experiments or analysis to make the whole research more strong and solid and sound, and then things in a longer timeline, like maybe 1 or 2 months of like in the next something to revise for additional cycle. So that would be something like drawing more parallels to other related works in the domain. For example, how to expand the scope of excitement level to additional data set or task settings. Yeah, so like a mixture of different levels of reviews based on the amount of time and effort needed to address those. And also, yeah, instead of being critical, having a very critical lens and pointing out weaknesses, like think from the other person's perspective and where the authors can move forward and improve their work on. So yeah, having some empathetic reviews to help improve the papers is also good.
Yes, I love that idea. So more empathy needed in the review process for sure. And yeah, try to be more constructive rather than critical, right? Like put yourself in the other person's shoes. Yeah. Have more thoughts on this?
Very much.
I want to, when it comes to how to get started with reviewing a paper, I just want to add one thing that I really appreciate the distinction between soundness and excitement that is adopted at ACLR. And for the soundness, the job of the reviewers is essentially to see if the claims that are made in the paper are supported by the results. Yeah? And this is fairly objective, but if then some other aspect is lowering your excitement, you can make this distinction also in the scores you give in the end, let's say. But I would say the main job of the reviewer is to judge the soundness of the paper. Also, when you review for journals and so on, then the excitement is pretty much determined already by the editor. Yeah, he is excited. It's not desk rejected, and so then it can still be rejected based on soundness, but that's in this case your main job then. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I think it's really good to split the review, like structure it more, right, on different components. So this eliminates some of the subjectivity we have when we review, and we can think more critically about the paper. Yes. Oh wow, a lot of questions. Yes. Go. Yes. You. Yeah. Yes. You can also say your name and yeah.
Yeah. So it's Alden. It's Alden University as well, or
Yes, you.
well, I mean, technically, I'm not at university right now, but I will start my master's at UCSD in the US. So, what I like, what I was thinking about is like, what's the thing that you think like changes in people when they develop like an academic career? So, for example, so like right now, I'm going to start my master's, and like I'm really excited. I really want to do it, etc. But how do you think people will change? What do you think are the lessons that people learn over time? Like so for some people, I think like they like lose like a little bit of excitement. What do you think that happens? How is the evolution of a person when they go through this journey? Just imagine like master's, PhD. How do you change? That can be yourselves, or like your like experience with other people in general.
You want? So I will give just some thoughts on that. So that's a big question, and I don't have really data on that, but so it's speculation. But lots of people say that academics are a bit through their career, they become hypercritical of things and trying to spot weaknesses everywhere. So maybe that comes from reviewing papers. I don't know. Yeah, but on a more yeah. So if you can try to counteract this by keeping the positive attitude, let's say, and seeing positive things, I think that's fantastic. I had one more thing that I forgot now, but I will give the word to someone else, and then maybe it comes back. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. I seem to have this negative take on everything, but mental trauma is a big development. I mean, it for everyone who is starting a PhD, especially, it is a very mentally challenging task. It's your own work that is very hard to dissociate from you as a person. And the first time you get that really harsh rejection, it just sucks. And you kind of over time learn to partially empathize with people more. You become understanding of what their journey means to them because you've kind of gone through a lot of the similarities, right? Every one of us has been in that position, or hopefully most of us at least. And I think over time you kind of develop a sense of like, hey, what does it mean to write a mean review? Like, what does it do up to a person because you've experienced it yourself? And I think similarly, well, there are certainly people that become more hypercritical. I think for somebody that is in a privileged enough position to do research for a living, it just also is still super exciting to me to see other people propose new stuff and still get to be the first or one of the first people to actually see this. And so that's something I've only recently realized where I'm like, hey, this is actually pretty cool. And I kind of want to stay in touch with this because not everyone actually has this chance. But so those are like the more emotional things I feel that have maybe also for me personally developed. But yeah, just a lot of what experience can make in a difference is the big thing that I can say at this point in my life. It's too bad we don't have like a super senior person here that can like talk about decades and how the review process changed over time, back in mind or whatever. I don't think any one of us can give that perspective quite yet. But yeah, it's also a great question to ask people that are really in the field for a long time. I think they would appreciate this.
Yeah, so I feel like I can't quite answer that question because we need something that's super senior for that. But at least I will give my like 2 cents on how you change throughout a PhD. Maybe I think on a positive note, I think something that I'm happy about is that at the beginning of maybe your research masters or your PhD, you start working on one project, and then maybe from that you go to the next one. But then you don't see all of the other potential projects that you could be working on. But towards the end of the PhD, there are so many like ideas and thoughts, and like you can see this whole tree of potential research projects developing, and you're like, oh, I couldn't go in so many directions. Whereas at the beginning of your PhD, maybe that you don't see the tree yet of all of the options, and because you're focused on like one project. And I think starting to see potential research projects and directions and opportunities. I think that's something that develops at least over the course of a PhD already, and that perhaps that like continues to change and develop over time. So that's like one positive thing. Yeah.
And so I think from my perspective, one of the changes from pre-PhD to maybe later stage PhD or afterward is thinking more longer term. So during maybe undergraduate years, maybe a lot of like students maybe like think it's happy to get a maybe something like workshop paper in, which is pretty good, like get exposure on how machine learning research, NLP research goes and have a workshop paper, pretty nice. During PhD years, I see a lot of my peers being happy maybe a paper here and a paper there on some small topics that excites them. And then, but thinking in the longer term, as people near PhD graduation stage, we see more and more like a reward model that encourages us to think more longer term. So like, right, not just on our personal take of interest from just one single person's perspective, but like on the impact that we can leave to the community, especially like from a 5 to 10 years from now. Yeah, we definitely think more in terms of the longer term impacts. So I think so from a researcher perspective, I think it's good to have a good mix of practicality and longer term thinking. So it depends on where people's stages are in their academic career, whether like maybe having a paper submission in is publication in adds a lot of value, then maybe a more practical way to it. But yeah, ultimately we want to keep on thinking about ambitious projects that leaves a longer term impact to our community.
Yes, great. Thank you for the question. Yes, I see a lot of other people want. Yes, you can go ahead. Yes.
Asking the author to additional experiments. For example, I was like my postdoc often says maybe don't make the limitations of future work too specific, because then the viewers might ask for this sort of things.
Yes, that's a good point. I noticed that in my papers too. I have to be very careful what I put in limitations, because they're gonna use that against me in the review system, in the review itself. And yeah, I think that's a really good point too, and it goes to the rebuttal, right? Like how do you feel about asking reviewer or asking the author to do additional experiments? When is that necessary? And I noticed that in the rebuttal, there's more and more new experiments results. So a few years ago, it wasn't the case. So I think we're moving more in that direction now.
Yeah, I can start. Yeah, so with regards to the limitations, I know it's so annoying if it's like copy paste and you're like, oh, but I put it in the limitations and now
exactly. Yeah.
I try not to get scared by that. I like to write my limitations as honest as possible, just like put whatever's on my mind, what I think is a limitation in there. There's a risk to that, like you can't quite avoid that you get one of those reviewers that only sticks to that. I think when it does happen, it's good to immediately flag it with the area chair, because it is like that's not a characteristic of a good review. It's something that you should actually avoid when you write a review. So immediately flag it. It can happen, but I as a reader really appreciate papers with honest and solid limitation sections. I think it's a fantastic addition to that we've had in the last few years. With regards to asking for extra experiments, yeah, I think like whenever it's something that can be sort of super quick to compute, as a reviewer, I may ask for it. Like I don't know if like run an additional metric for which I know it doesn't cost any time whatsoever, maybe. But yeah, I think as reviewers, we should be really mindful of what we're asking of authors. There are only a few days in a rebuttal, right? So like try not to go beyond anything that's like more than a few hours, maybe. That's my take, but I have to say I don't quite memorize the official guidelines that are on the website right now because they keep changing.
That's a good point to follow up on the official guidelines, because I was also surprised that some of the cycles, recent cycles, that the the authors, after just a couple of days, for example, came up with replicating their experiments in 5 or 6 more languages, and I was like, okay, wow, yeah. but it got me wondering, because I remembered that at some point the policy for the rebuttal excluded substantial new results that they actually should not be considered. I think it's still the case, but I'm not 100% sure. And so it's it's hard to navigate, let's say, to what extent. So to what extent is then acceptable or not? Yeah, because it's certainly not in the same fashion as if it were in the original paper. So it's a bit hard to judge for the reviewers. And if there's just a table coming up in the platform that is supposed to present extra reviews without all the details, maybe. Yeah. Apart from that, yeah, limitation sections, I agree. Be honest about it. Don't get discouraged by the mean reviewer. Instead, think about the good way to do it. If you would judge soundness, it would also take into account that you have honestly discussed the limitations of your claims, let's say. Yeah.
For me, yeah, good point raised about limitations. I was just on my flight here helping my students revise their ACO rolling review July submissions. Yeah, and I took out the last sentence of their limitation session because I think the wording was just very doesn't put their best foot forward, and also like super lack confident. I believe the type of limitation they said was already clear enough in the main 8 pages. So that's why I think like professional phrasing is something to consider. Yeah, and obviously we do want limitations to be insightful about core limitations that guide future work. So it's a good balance, right? So not be overly lacking confident in the work presented, but yet at the same time also revealing enough limitations to guide future work. Yeah, in terms of experiments, I mentioned a few hours of experiment. For me, it seems like based on what I see reviewers leave comment, I believe like 1 or 2 days of work of experiments. I see it often the case. So I think maybe that's within like something that happens a lot. Yeah, but not like takes 4 or 5 days and beyond. That's too much for like a reviewing author response cycle. Yeah, and in general, I observe that like the more detailed and elaborative author response are both from giving insights, intuitions, and also experimental empirical backings. Typically like the score rates are more like reflective of that in support. It shows like authors' confidence in a sense.
I feel like I should clarify. I like if a paper should be rejected because there are missing experiments, of course, that can take days or I don't know how long, you know. I was just thinking of like, what do I think is realistic for an author response? Yeah, maybe like half a day or something like that is what I would expect as a reviewer, but there are no like golden standards for that actually.
Yes. Okay, we're gonna, do you want to go ahead?
So the reviewers mentioned that like the feedback is not positive, but like more like part of thing. Yeah, the reviewers mentioned once you speak law your paper, which is like not so critical, but it's clearly missing. And you are able to provide like not completely, but at least a draft of it during your body. How to frame it properly, like because you can come up as many wrong things. First of all, that you didn't have it in the paper initially, so it's kind of like well. And then you also are providing sufficient details, which seems like your initial submitted something like very raw thing, and the reviewers might think that you were like trying to make your paper significantly better than it used to be. And finally, like you're providing a draft of it, not like a complete version, that like exact version that you will include into your paper. You're describing how you would frame it into your paper. Like, is there like a good strategy in this situation? Because the feedback is both positive, but you don't know like how not to come up wrong something very different direction.
Yeah, it's a tough one. from what you describe, and putting myself into the shoes of a reviewer, that sounds like a resubmission to me. You have brought up all the points, right? There is substantial formalization missing. It sounds like there is a good chunk of how this paper could be a better version of itself by being resubmitted in 2 months. The other thing, and this is also from a reviewer's perspective, or maybe actually, this is kind of like slightly going towards the rebuttal thing, which we haven't talked much about. You vastly overestimate the attention span of the average reviewer. And this is something I've talked about actually just at lunch when we were talking about this topic. It's very hard to keep a rebuttal short enough. And that seems the prime reason why you can't do a reasonable case of keeping a rebuttal short. That is, of course, maybe there is a case. I don't know your exact paper. I don't know the exact flaw that you're describing. But for rebuttals, generally, I think the idea is try to address the points very short, like keep it very brief, because especially if you're a meta reviewer, like an AC, you can't read the entirety for all reviews and follow-ups, etc. Like I think we're instructed to review at best like 2 responses or something. So the longer you make those, the less chance of a meta reviewer picking up on those you have. This might not be the satisfactory answer you're hoping for. I get that. But I'm curious to hear if anyone else has a more positive take on it or a different take.
Just very brief add on to that. So yeah, try to keep reviews like author response are short and sweet wherever possible. But yeah, if it's a bit longer, then I think formatting is also plays a good part, like bolding, texting, italicizing key points to make the read easier, like life easier for reviewers and ACs. Yeah. Right.
Okay, thank you. Are there more points on this? We can get more questions. I saw more hands. Yes, go. Yes.
And whether they have too much power or not. So maybe on the positive side, there are many cases where rebuttal does help, right? You have 2 to 2, and a rebuttal helps mass recognition. But I've heard anecdotally as well that many cases where a reviewer is giving 4, the meta reviewer gives 2 because they throw in their own opinion, say, okay, I think these reviews are useless. I will say, I read the paper for 30 minutes myself, and I think it's 2. So I was wondering what your thoughts on this were, like whether the system is changed or whether you find a better solution for it.
Well, the situation that you're describing with like 444 and then the meta reviewer gives a 2, that doesn't sound good. I mean, so I think ideally where the meta reviewer gets more like freedom to not follow the reviewers is in specific situations, namely if there's a huge disagreement between the different reviewers, then it can help for the meta reviewer to step in, read the paper themselves in more than 30 minutes, and then make an educated decision there. So like not following, like deciding not to follow one of the reviewers that is disagreeing with the others. Another scenario in which I think the meta reviewer should have more like freedom is if the reviews are just very short, very low quality, then it becomes a lot harder to trust those scores. So again, like then you read the paper in a lot more than 30 minutes, and then assign a score that might not look like it immediately follows from the individual reviews. Yeah, if it looks like the meta reviewer has gone rogue, basically, I think that that's also something that can be addressed, right? So right now, ARR also has these opportunities to, they even have like specific categories of ways in which a meta review can be unfair. So you can like submit a like complaint to the senior area chair about the meta review, flagging one of those common issues. So yeah, in summary, I think there should be some freedom, but ideally you follow the reviewer scores. But if it happens to you, complain.
Yes. Good point. Yeah, maybe the reviews were AI generated, or it was hard to rely on them.
And I think these days we the upper level area chair and beyond all have this more or less awareness of taking a look into anomalous cases like complaints. And for my own case, for example, I had papers in which the overall assessment average is like high score, and then the meta review flagged it down, but in the end the paper got into main anyways. So I believe like from that experience, I believe program chair took in, or senior area chair took in the time to look at the discrepancy between the scores and do their own considerations. Yeah, and in the so that was my most recent case, but yeah, in the broader look in the community, these anomalous score discrepancy differences all deserve, I really agree, more attention to be looked into, especially like raise complaints and have awareness. Yeah.
Maybe a final take in to add on to these additions to the review process. I think similarly to what we discussed about reviewers being more data-driven in their background, I think SACs or ACs have the same, where just having an idea of like, are there particular ACs that overwhelmingly reject papers, even though the scores are better, etc. I think like all of this is something we could look at. Again, I can't make policy recommendations, but I think it would be interesting to have like kind of the work that we talked about earlier, where you look at how are reviewers behaving, what is the type of person that you could get, and how does that affect the chances of your paper getting it, etc. But it's always going to be more work for us to kind of put that burden of proof and then also the work of evaluating evaluations. So yeah, good research idea. I don't know.
Yes.
Mike, do you have an alternative idea in mind? For what other system, if it's not meta reviews or multiple meta reviews?
No,
Or...
yes, because these anecdotes I just heard recently that yeah, that it's from a French perspective, right? Like, can the AC really throw in their own opinion like that, even if the reviewers are reasonable to some extent? I haven't thought about it longer, so I don't know a better case or system. I mean, I think it's a very established system, right? Having an area chair in every field. So you get that questions like that. I think that's just, again, as Dan said, just more work.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, but I think previous suggestions, flagging it and still submitting it. So that's a good point, actually. What you mentioned, or still hitting the commitment button, and that also sometimes, and the program chair would go with the reviews instead of the meta reviews. That gives hope, let's say, yeah, in these cases. Huh?
Sure, yeah.
So, for example, in Applicant 4, right, there are score distributions by Twitter to see all the nice score distributions, whether they go to main or findings. And you do see many cases where reviews have high scores but a low measure, and they go to findings. And for many people, that's not disastrous because they don't want to go to findings. So they feel, again, probably, yeah, how do you say it? Nice, it's like screwed over. So yeah, I mean, in that way, you can see it, right? That then the AC has a bit too much power, like deciding your. But now I'm going a bit old, like your base, because now your base is in findings, or even it was close to findings, now it's just object as a base. Well, yeah, it's very so useless. So, yeah, this anecdote was from someone who is very experienced in the field. Also, like this, they say, yeah, if they see they're going to be up to their liking, then like this, that I disagree with, basically. But yeah, sorry for that 30 seconds.
No, it's an interesting point. Yeah, I feel like it's also because of the nature of the reviewing system, it's more hierarchical, right? So the AC has a higher say than the reviewers, because the AC is selected based on their seniority and so on. So that seems to matter the most. And and it's a good point. Like when cases like this happen, we have to think more about, yeah, maybe we need a restructure or at least to bring these points up. Yeah. Yes, other questions? I see more hands. Maybe new people who, yes, you can go ahead. You, yes.
So wondering in that case, if you have any other opportunities for on work where you might not be able to get that review process. That makes sense.
So you submit your paper to a workshop and you don't get useful reviews, right? That's the problem. Mm-hmm. I see. Yes, that's a good point. So if there are alternatives to getting feedback other than the peer review system.
Yeah, I have a short answer, then I'll allow the others to say something. So one, I think the student research workshop can be really good for that. They even explicitly offer like tutors to students. So it's more than just getting reviews. Like you can even get an actual tutor. And reviewers there know that it's the student research workshop, so they hopefully are more like willing to offer feedback. But I've also seen examples of like workshops I organized where people got their paper in. I don't even know whether their reviews were high quality or whether they were on the shorter side. But what I did notice was that some of the posters at one of my workshops were explicitly asking for feedback. So like one of them literally brought Post-its and pens and was like, this is ongoing work. We want your feedback. Give us your thoughts. So I thought that was a really cool example of how to get feedback at a workshop, because a workshop can be very topic specific. So that might be like the perfect audience to get that feedback, but sometimes you have to try a little harder to like get it from them. So I think, yeah, those are my suggestions.
Yes, that's a good point. Yes, present your work more widely and take advantage of the audience and ask more questions.
So I can feel that because I came from a very small chair and we had kind of the same problem. What I realized was very helpful for me is finding special interest groups. We have so many Discords, online communities, etc. right now. It's on you. You have to start that. But I've had people that were sharing submissions beforehand and getting feedback that way. It's kind of the same idea of a workshop, except that you're doing it before the workshop actually happens. It can be hard depending on a topic. I admit that. Like for some, you just don't have anything. Especially as a junior researcher, it's also very hard to get into those groups. You need to be at a conference to meet people in person or kind of know about them or know their work. So if you have a chance like this week, make the most of it. And hopefully you can find some more longer lasting communities that are worth sharing with.
Yes. I've seen, are there other questions? I think I saw more hands. Oh, someone in the back, I see. Yes. You can also come closer. I wish we had more microphones. Yeah. Thank you.
Because I'm an audience who both the reviewers, but also be patient and asking. So, I mean, as an author, you want to defend yourself for sure, but you also want to agree with the reviewer. So that it increases the score, so that your paper has higher chance to get in. So I wonder what is like the great balance between these two actions in writing the review.
Yes, that's a good point, right? How to, when you respond in the rebuttal, right? How to balance those two aspects of being agreeing with the reviewer, or being disagreeable, and at the same time defending your paper.
Again, I'll start. So I think the first one we talked a bit about already, but reading the review guidelines is a really good thing also when you're looking at rebuttals, because, well, you don't want to be like the stickler to the rules, but there are some legit reasons that are worth flagging that have come up in a review. And then you kind of want to be ready to point those out. For me, the personally most important thing is, and again, I have a hard time with this sometimes too, is the emotional disconnect between the review and the response, especially, you know, if you think it's AI generated, you think they missed the main point, you get frustrated. The rebuttal should never show this. And it's very tough to kind of keep it kind of polite, you know, but it still matters a lot. If I'm a reviewer and I get an angry review rebuttal, then you kind of have this loop of like it degenerates very quickly. So I think those are the two main ones. I'm sure the others have much better tips on the specific layout of it. But again, just try to remember the rules and be positive about it as much as you can.
Yeah, it's a fine art to be persuasive, polite at the same time, and yeah, defend your paper in some way. But it all, like, the advice don't hold everywhere. But yeah, usually, in general, you would praise the reviewer for his great insight. Yeah, of course. And then you say, okay, what could be done? But yeah, how to cross your fingers for increase in scores. Oftentimes there are cases where, okay, this extra experiment would help, yes, but maybe your main point is already supported by what you have, yeah, to try to emphasize. If it's just an example case, yeah, if it's a case that yes, there are open holes, but they are not so important for the main points of the paper, and that could be something to look for. To see if you could make a case there. And another tip, not sure how much it is helpful in the end, but I only experienced this with my papers. But it can be that there's a very eager reviewer that goes very much in depth, and you enter like a big discussion with them. And so the advice of short responses is sort of neglected because it's like a thread distributed over multiple posts in open review. And if that happens to you, I at least tried to make then at the end of the rebuttal period a kind of another summary that will especially target to area chairs. And there you can also say in an agreeable way. So if I missed something, then I ask the reviewers to fill it in, yeah. Or if there are any open questions, so you sort of ping again all your reviewers with this kind of post to reconsider their judgments if they don't have any further questions. So that's not explicitly, but you make the ping anyways by making the post. Yeah? So that would be my 2 cents. Huh?
I think one thing I recently learned was to try and be as concrete as possible in a response to the reviewer. So like I recently had an interesting case where a reviewer was, of course, asking me to integrate more related work. And what everyone does is, and what I did, I promised to do so. Interestingly, this reviewer was not happy with that. They were like, I know people promise to do so, but then they don't. And this taught me a lesson, actually. So what I did was that I, instead of promising to do so, I literally revised the text and gave them the text that I promised to put in the paper. And then I realized, okay, like you should maybe make it like as concrete as possible instead of like vague promises, or like try to run that proof of concept experiment of what you're going to add, or try to revise the text and just give that. So as concrete as possible. And indeed, also with respect to the AC, it can be so hard to decide whether or not a rebuttal was, like to what extent they reached agreement. If you feel like you didn't reach agreement, you can also just leave like a small comment to sort of summarize that to the AC. Or if you feel like the reviewer didn't do what they promised by like updating the score, or didn't get back to you, like just flagging it, showing that you are on top of stuff, even if they are not. Yeah, so explicit communication there.
Yeah, these are all very great suggestions. Yeah, and in terms of concrete implementations, usually like author response, like if you may not agree with reviewers, there's a general template that I think people who go through PhD training may learn. It's like, oh, thank you for raising this interesting point on blah blah blah. We hope to clarify blah blah blah, and then finally hope this makes it clearer for you and something like that. And then I oftentimes see authors following up in further threads a few days later if the reviewer does not reply that they acknowledge they read it. Like, oh, if there's any remaining questions, please do not hesitate to reach out, and hope our author response successfully clarifies your previous concerns. Like, be more proactive and be more concrete in footing as well. Like, draw from like how other reviewers perceive your your merits in a positive lighting, as well as where you already address partially some of the aspects the reviewer raised already in your paper, like point to specific lines to make your response more solid and concrete.
Yes, it's great points. Thank you. Yeah, yes.
Also about I was wondering how to get this training and how to know all these things that would make a perfect student.
So you're applying for a PhD or for master's? You're a master. Okay. And you're looking for resources to learn more about the PhD process, how to apply. Yes. So how to stand out as a candidate. So the like the materials you submit, right? The personal statement and all that. Yes. Yes, you can share from your own experience what made you good candidates, PhD candidates.
Very good question. I used to write a two-page blog reflecting on my journey and suggestions. Then later on, I think at different stages in career, maybe it attracts too much attention that I wanted, so I took down the blog. But anyways, I'm happy to share some helpful insights that I think may help people. Yeah, because I had a not successful round of PhD application as an undergraduate student, and then I took 2 extra years studying a master's degree before finally successfully applying for a PhD degree. So they were failure case and also also a successful round of application. And during those times, like I think some tips are like more research exposure. And then in the initial round, I did not apply to enough schools. And these days, there are a lot of applicants all into NLP and machine learning. So the student candidate pile is large, so need to apply to more schools. For example, I 5 years ago, maybe applied to 20 schools. And then, yeah, so like have more research exposure and a balance of like reach schools and maybe more safety schools and be more open-minded. So like I became more open-minded and am happy to apply to a broader range of schools that I think I may be a good fit in. And also obviously reaching out to potential advisors to like gauge like two-way interest, but not necessarily that they will reply though, but also like reaching out to students in those labs as well, because usually during the admission cycle, faculty advisors may talk with students to check with a potential student candidate. Yeah, and also like I spent definitely more time writing my statement of purpose in my initial undergraduate cycle of applying for PhD school. I got explicit feedback that my statement of purpose really did not spend enough time to have a cohesive and exciting story. Yeah, so I spent rounds of iterating back to have a more cohesive statement of purpose, more exciting one. Yeah, because teachers, faculty advisors look into like, for example, the written skills of students as well, because that means like later on they can write a long page, 8-page research paper. Well, yeah, there's a good mixture, but like overall, like do more research and talk with more people. Yeah, and things will be fine.
Yes, also just one more piece of advice to also be a bit selective about the supervisor you want to be working with for a large chunk of your next few years. Yeah, And I mean, other things depend largely also on countries and institutions and like this. But in Europe, it's usually also not bad. In many countries, you get like paid like as if you were a full-time employee, or you are a full-time employee then, yeah. So that's quite comfortable. And otherwise, what can, yeah, the usual things can make your application stronger, but this not really sure what I think about it, that more and more people expect already some papers from a master student, that they have like a workshop paper or so from their thesis. That helps surely, but it's I'm not sure if it's a good idea to go in that direction to make it more and more competitive. But if you want to go with the best or most prestigious institutions, and that's probably what you need to do. But maybe there are also good supervisors at different institutions. Huh? So that's maybe a thought for you. Yeah?
Yeah, both are great points, by the way, for both of you. So the one thing I want to add is, and you kind of already said some of this earlier. So the people most eager to talk about their research are PhD students. So I feel especially if you don't have that direct connection through an institution, reaching out to PhD students, learning a little bit about them, even just asking if they have like a time for a half-hour chat, I think your success chance there is much, much higher, and you'll still learn a ton. Like these people are becoming experts in their particular area. They sometimes, depending on how interested you are, they can tell you more about the climate at a particular group or school, etc., which is, again, already mentioned, super important. So I think that's a shortcut. Don't be spammy is my other recommendation. I've gotten enough of those mails myself where I know it's a copy paste. I'm not going to read it. I'm sorry. A personalized email gets me to pay attention so much more to your outreach. I know it's a lot of work, and I'm not saying you need to send the same amount of messages, but just the ones you do send, put the effort in and make sure that they're worth sending, basically, also from your perspective.
Yes. Thank you so much. Also, we keep discussing this question at each mentorship session. So you can find previous versions, previous videos on the YouTube channel, the ACL mentorship. We have entire sessions dedicated to how to apply to a PhD, what to focus on, and we touch on all these points that you mentioned. Yes. Great. Yes.
You can find a lot of papers, usually in workshops, that are like objectively it's a very good quality. So like there's a lot of it's well written, it makes sense. But the message is very poor. I don't know how to say that. Since there's no social justice, it's very supposed to be like, so it's gonna be like fairness in a horrible application and the ethical discussion are not discussed or like just something around that. And I always feel bad that this paper because I see the amount of work, but like it's not something that I would like to see published. I never know how to rate this kind of thing.
Do you try raising it for or flagging it for the ethics?
It's just people doing technical work without the social effect, but it's like optimization problem, but when it's about race, it's really
Oh, I see. So your question is how to address that in the review process. Yes, that's an important point, right? As AI, actually, there's a trend now. There's more and more submissions on applications of AI, so we need to be careful what we apply these models on, and yeah, we can also discuss about that too.
Very short answer. It's always worth considering that a field is learning, right? Like nothing is set in stone. we have a much more extensive, like the whole limitation section is what, like 2 years old or something. Similarly, the ethical concerns is something we have just for now. I don't think many other ML conferences are that thorough on it, for better or worse. Worse in the sense that it creates another layer of, I have to look out for things that aren't my area of expertise. You kind of said it, right? Like, I think for ethics specifically, you need to be very familiar with where could potential biases come from, what are those biases looking like, etc. So I think it's always, to answer your question, it's always worth flagging. The least you can do is raise a concern about it, and you will always have usually somebody else that will share their opinion on it, and they might disagree with you. Yeah, I think this is also very interesting to consider in a time of social media. You know, it's very easy to lash out and reach potentially a lot of people with it. So I think it's also, in our fairness, we should be responsible towards our authors before we raise concerns publicly, right? So I think if as much as you can, bring this up during a review process, reach out to editors or like workshop organizers, etc. Sometimes it might just be that the authors didn't think about it and they do feel bad to some extent, just didn't consider it enough. But it's a very sensitive question. And I think especially there, people have very different opinions that can differ very widely as well.
Yes, thank you. Are there other questions? I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. Someone new? Otherwise, we can take. No. Okay, you can go. Yes.
Yes, like I was thinking like about let's say so my experience is that you know, like before I started interacting with people that do research, I had sort of like an image that everyone was perfect. So I thought, you know, I thought that these people were so smart that, you know, like they always were on time for everything. You know, like everything was perfect in the research world. But actually, when you go into this like a little bit more, you start to see that people, well, we're humans, right? We're humans. Like so for example, something that I was like a little bit shocked about is like conferences many times they get their deadlines extended, right? And I thought this is so unprofessional, right? Like this is not. Yeah, but like I mean, it happens like a lot, and I was wondering, like, what do you think are tricks to try to be like I think like something that happens to us like we're perhaps like a little bit worse with time management and things like that. Just because like maybe we're creative minds, we prefer like a lot of questions and not like technicalities. So what would be like suggestions to be like a little bit better on that stage, let's say? I hope I'm not offensive. Like I don't mean like anything bad, but you know, it's just like my personal experience that I was like a little bit surprised, right?
Very interesting question. Just my personal thought on it, maybe something to start off with is hedge your risk. So for example, like given a constrained amount of time and computational resources, what can we do that is publishable at our current stage in our career? So like, for example, some suggestions is like in the beginning of a research cycle, like several months ahead of a submission deadline, like we can think more on the different possibilities and what's more exciting and feasible. Yeah, but as later on experiments come out and like some results pointing to, then we have to balance about like practicality of what's publishable given the current amount of positive results, and for example, how to complete the story. Yeah, and sometimes like I also suggest to my students, if not a long paper, but like if we want to like share our community of findings so far, consider like a short paper. So yeah, like be mindful of what career stage you are at, and hedge your risk accordingly to the time constraints and resource constraints.
I don't know about time management in general. I do know that indeed workshops sometimes get their deadlines extended. With ARR, for instance, whenever meta reviews should go out, they don't always go out. And to some extent, it's also good to realize that some of that is not always because there's malice in individuals. Like I mean, the whole system is sort of suffering because we need this huge amount of reviews, and then everyone has their other work, and then reviews come on top of that, and that's when reviews come in late. I do think that people are also trying to work to address it. So I think right now, at least for the last ARR round, which was the first time was in May, I think there were some stern messages about if you're too late, then you may come on some sort of like block list, and you perhaps in the future you won't be able to submit to like the next round or something like that. So there were some extra warnings about it. So like at least in the reviewing system within ARR, people are working on trying to address issues of like how can we get those reviews in on time. At the same time, it's good to realize that it's because we're all stressed and we have so much to do, and there's so many reviews. So it's also just a consequence of the bigger system, which can't be solved by one simple fix. But I try to submit stuff on time.
Yeah, we can do our best individually. Yes, that's a good point. And I think it's also it shows that we're doing this too fast. There's like fast AI and slow AI, and we're all going very fast in this direction. So maybe we should slow down a bit and be more mindful. Yes, you have maybe that's the last question. Yes.
Yeah, maybe follow up on that. Yeah, imagine you're really crunching for a deadline. You finish writing. Your paper has had until you finish writing for the deadline. In your opinion, do you feel it's ethically responsible to still send in your paper? Because in my opinion, if you're done a couple of hours before deadline, you're not done. Okay. So, like in this way, I also feel like people are doesn't also apply to their probably you're overloading the system. Do you think maybe next round can be done to finish your paper instead of just sending it in like that and still getting reviews, which in the end is feedback, right? But in a way, you're also overloading the system. I've talked to people who are either side of the void. It's fine, it's not fine. So I'm wondering about.
I think a short answer is do what you think is right. And concretely, these days, there are many different conference submission venues, like in different months. So if not this month, then you can wait 2 more months, and there's likely a different and like relevant conference for you to submit. So that's not bad. And you can always archive it in advance. And on a practical standpoint, I also know like your collaborators and senior authors may be not very happy if you just finish a few hours beforehand, and so they did not get a chance to look over and review the complete paper yet. So yeah, do what you believe is right, and be considerate of the other authors on your team, and also be aware of different options that are available for you to submit anyways. Yeah, thanks.
I think there's no good answer here, so I know I'd like to bring some new ones. So first of all, what is done a few hours before the deadline, that can mean different things to different people. So like for me, even if my results are done, I don't know, 2 weeks before the deadline, I might still be polishing the paper until a few hours before the deadline. That doesn't mean I don't think it's ready. It's just me polishing until the very last minute. So like there's some nuance there. Like that can mean many things for many different people. I think an important thing here is the work rigorous and reliable? So if you like you're rushing with your experiments, and then a few hours before the deadline they're done and the paper is being written in rush, do you think there might still be like bugs in the code? Could there be mistakes? Then yeah, maybe don't submit the paper. If you think it's reliable, it's reproducible, it's rigorous, then I think if all co-authors are on board and have read it and have contributed, then yes. But yeah, don't submit something in a rush if you can't trust it yourself. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I think this is tough. So it's kind of like a don't hate the player, hate the game kind of question, because as long as there exists incentives that incentivize you publishing more, and we have that with hiring committees, with tenure committees, with getting internships, with getting jobs, you will not get rid of the problem of wanting to submit something. And I don't think you're going to be able to limit this in any way, because if you say, oh, it has to be ready a week before the deadline, then you set a new deadline a week before the deadline. and you will have the same problem, right? Like it's how can you enforce it? Or the alternative, you give ACs even more power, which is kind of relates to your earlier question, because somebody has to make that call of like, is it a last minute paper or not? And somebody kind of needs to judge that. I think it's nigh impossible to get rid of. And we have so many more obvious things to address, kind of like with this teaching versus publishing impact, etc., which is so deeply ingrained in academia. And I think, especially in our field, we're lucky enough that you don't have to go down that route. But that's part of the reason, for example, why I left academia. Just didn't have the track record because I tried to be a bit more thorough, maybe, and now I don't have the whatever many papers that people wanted, etc. So I think it's just very hard to adjust it in a way that it's fair to everyone. And I don't think there's an easy fix for it.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Yes, let's thank our panelists. Really great questions and answers. I hope it was very useful for everyone. And yeah, thank you so much for coming here and participating and yeah, sharing from your experience. It was really valuable. And we got to record this, so it's gonna get to even more people. So yeah, thank you so much. Okay, great. Yeah, there were some people online too. They're clapping, but they didn't ask questions. I asked them in the chat, but yeah, all good.
Can we turn this off somehow, or is it just gonna